Chris Webber was definitely fraudulent. But let fans of the 90s tell you, they'll tell you that Chris Webber was a Hall of Famer. I guess being average, I guess not winning, I guess you just, and you got to think. Look at some of the players Chris Webber was playing up against. 20 and 10 doesn't really mean much when you're going up against Luke Onley, when you're going up against Chris Dudley, when you're going up against Oliver Miller, when you're going up against an old Sam Perkins. I can run down the list of all of these bums in the 90s that I know you were going up against.
All right, old school NBA fans, self-researched, NBA facts. Got another video for you. As always, thanks to anybody who watches my videos, subscribes to my channel. I really appreciate it. As you saw in the intro, FYF, that stupid fool, I found this video because I was trying to find some clown denouncing the 90s defense as anything other than stellar. Oh, and that idiot did not disappoint. He came through just like I thought he would. First off, whatever that Chris Webber business was, I don't know, but nobody ever thinks of Chris Webber as a 90s player. Sure, he started out in the 90s, but his prime was clearly in the 2000s. I think he made one All-Star in the 90s or something like that. He was a good player, but not until Barkley, Kemp, Malone, those players aged out. Then he started making All-Stars or whatever. But he's making my point for me on this. So for some more context, here's FYF talking about the 90s centers trying to make the case that they really weren't as good as everybody says. Laughable.
As if the bigs of the 90s were just so much better than any other era. That is unbelievable. And so I'm just here to debunk that. That's what I do. I just debunk things. People trash on this era. They say that bigs of this era are not that good. But, at least this era is admittedly a point guard and shooting guard era. This era, we don't profess to have the best bigs. We don't profess that. The 90s professed to have the best bigs of all time. Across the board. They were just so deep. Every team, night in and night out, Akeem Olajuwon, David Robinson, Shaquille O'Neal played against Hall of Fame bigs. Not only were they Hall of Fame bigs, but they played against Hall of Fame bigs. That's the premise that you're led to believe.
So the dude admits that the modern era does not match up center-wise. He can't name an era with better centers. So he's basically saying, yeah, the 90s were the best centers, but they really weren't that good. What point are you trying to make here? That dude is a clown. All he knows for sure is that I love the modern NBA, and anybody who says anything about the 80s or 90s is lying to you or exaggerating or whatever. Well, I got the receipts for fools like him and JJ Redick and all these other people who want to take a piss on the 90s. Well, this ought to sum it up for all you clowns. Here's a batch of players that all of them started their careers in the 90s. Now, these are very good defensive players in their heyday. Absolutely, I would not say otherwise. Here you go. You got Clifford Robinson. Now, no, was he an elite defender, legendary defender? No. But the point is, Clifford Robinson came in the league in 1990. He was actually a 23-year-old rookie. This dude's first time he ever showed up on the Defensive Player of the Year ballot. Now, that is a different voting group. I'm pretty sure Defensive Player of the Year ballot is the media, and all defense was the coaches. I'm pretty sure about that, but I might have it backwards. But either way, he didn't show up on a Defensive Player of the Year ballot until 1999. He was 7th, 32 years old. This guy was on the DPOY ballot 3 times. First time he was on an all-defensive team was 2000 at the age of 33. So I got to ask the question, why did it take him so long to make an all-defensive team? Why? What happened? I think we know the answer. Now here's another guy that started out. He was much younger, no doubt. But he did not start out the NBA just dominating defensively. Ben Wallace. His rookie season was 97. All right, fine. He didn't get on the DPOY ballot until 01, age 26. He finished 5th. He didn't make all defense until 2002, age 27. That's fine, no big deal. But if the 90s were so weak or so overrated, why didn't Ben Wallace come right in immediately, making first team all defenses, defensive players of the year, That doesn't make sense to me at all. How about Doug Christie? Here's a guy who made 4 all-defensive teams. He came in the league in 1993. He was in the league a little while. His first Defensive Player of the Year or all-defensive team was 2001 at the age of 29. So why did it take him so long to catch on? A late bloomer? Or maybe because the 90s were so stacked defensively that you had to wait your turn until all these players aged out. That seems like the more logical conclusion here. Bruce Bowen, an 8-time all-defensive player, came in the league in 97. He was older. I think he was like 25 years old. His first time on DPOY ballot or all defense was 01 at the age of 29. What happened? Maybe the league was just tough to make all defenses because there were so many great defensive players. I was watching the 2000 playoffs between the Knicks and the Miami Heat, and Bruce Bowen was on that team, Miami. P.J. Brown, Dan Marley, Alonzo Mourning, these guys all made multiple all-defensive teams. In fact, Alonzo Mourning won Defensive Player of the Year that year. So they were on a stellar defensive team. But he was clearly outshined by his teammates. And this wasn't a young player. Marcus Camby, 1997 rookie. He didn't show up on a Defensive Player of the Year ballot until 06 at the age of 31. His first all-defensive team at the age of 30. Chauncey Billups, he came in 98. He didn't make an all-defensive team until 2004 at the age of 28. Alonzo Mourning came in 93, a 22-year-old rookie, the same class as Shaq. Why couldn't he make all defense? What was the problem? Well, because maybe you had Olajuwon Robinson and Dikembe Mutombo who had the center position on lock for all defense. And if for some reason one of the guys got hurt, you had Patrick Ewing right there to snag one of them. Shaquille O'Neal, he made 3 all-defensive teams, but he had to wait until 2000 at the age of 27. Why? Because like I said, all these other great elite defensive centers were in front of him. He came in 93, just like Mourning. He didn't make an all-defensive team until his 7th season. That's exactly why. Now, when you look at this group of players, their first all-defensive team was anywhere between 27 to 33 years old. Now, if you are of the camp that's like, oh, well, maybe they were just late bloomers, that's closer to their prime anyway. Okay, let's take a look at this crop of players. The great elite defensive players of the 90s that all of a sudden actually are now bums. Who knew? They weren't that great. Hakeem Olajuwon, rookie in 1985. His first all-defensive team, 1985. Right away, immediately makes all-defense. David Robinson comes in the league in 1990, made his first all-defensive team in 1990. His second full season, he was runner-up for Defensive Player of the Year. Gary Payton, he came in the league in 91. By 94, he's on the Defensive Player of the Year ballot, top 5, and first team all-defense. Karl Malone comes in the league in 86. Made his first all-defensive team in 1988 at the age of 24. And Karl Malone is not even an elite, great defender. Now, towards the end of the 90s, he was making all-defensive teams. But I believe a lot of that is because Dennis Rodman was starting to age a little bit, and he wasn't getting all those all-defensive teams anymore. But still, Shawn Kemp was never thought of as a bum on defense. He never made an all-defensive team. He was on the Defensive Player of the Year ballot a couple times, but he was a solid defender, very good defender. He was never on an all-defensive team. Patrick Ewing, just like Malone, came in 1986. By 1988, made his first all-defensive team. And how about this forgotten non-Hall of Famer that if people don't know, they need to?
To Davis. Davis against Alvin Robertson, trying to drive him inside. Robertson knocks it away, picked up Matthews. Matthews back the other way, drives out away, dishes it off to Robertson, who puts it down. It's Ray Williams. Outside, a pass intended for Roby, knocked down, stolen by Robertson. Robertson overruns the ball, finally recovers, goes up, puts it up, and it's good.
Milwaukee basketball. X-Man on his right flank, skips to X, glides to the glass, stripped out of his hand by Robertson. Ball loose on the floor beneath the rebound. He'll challenge Sigma, goes up, misses the shot. Page has the rebound, stripped out of his hand. Big through with the inline shut off. Hook passes inside of McMillan. Back out of his hands by Robertson. Near sideline. On top of Dallas, Robertson right. Taps it in the backcourt. Here he comes, Alvin Robertson. Skip the moment. Pumps it to McMillan. Swings it over to Ellis. Fighting by Robertson. McMillan looking low for Ellis. Drops it inside low to Davis. Now low to McKee. Quick move on here. Sends it to the line. Stumbles. Tries to save it in back. Nate with 8 with a 6 on the shot clock. Inside to Ellis.
Alvin Robertson. This dude was straight up deadly. If I had to say, forget about Hall of Fame. Forget about longevity or tenure or anything like that. Defensive guards, just playing defense as a guard. He's one of the 3 best I've ever seen. And it would be Alvin Robertson, it would be Michael Jordan, and it would be Gary Payton. Those are the 3 best defensive guards I've ever seen. Those 3. Now, I would say Kobe was up there in the mix. Jason Kidd, very good. Players like Joe Dumars. Yeah, there's several really good ones. John Stockton was really good. There's a bunch of really good defensive guards. I mean, Chris Paul was a good defensive guard. But those are the 3, for me, are the best I've ever seen. Alvin Robertson came in the league in 1985. The same draft class as John Stockton, Charles Barkley, Hakeem Olajuwon, and Michael Jordan, right? That's a pretty good class to be in, I think you'd have to agree. Well, this dude, in his 2nd season, not only was he first team all defense, he won Defensive Player of the Year in year 2. If you would have asked me who's most likely to get the first Defensive Player of the Year, Michael Jordan, Hakeem Olajuwon, John Stockton, or Alvin Robertson, I probably would have said Olajuwon. Nope, Alvin Robertson did. And all the guys who are highlighted in purple are guys who won Defensive Player of the Year. Joe Dumars came into the league in 86. Made his first all-defensive team in 1989 at the age of 25. A 5-time all-defensive player. He finished 3rd for Defensive Player of the Year in 1990 at the age of 26. Now again, these are elite defenders I'm giving you. Absolutely. Cream of the crop defenders in the 90s. I purposely left Michael Jordan out of it because I hate always feeling like I'm so biased. So I left him out on purpose. Don't need to go with his exploits. All these players in the first graph from the 2000s, those are the premier defenders of the 2000s. Now sure, Kevin Garnett was one of them. Tim Duncan is one of them. Jason Kidd. And those guys started in the 90s also. Scottie Pippen, 1988, his rookie year. He was on the Defensive Player of the Year ballot and made all defense in 1991 by age 25. And then this dude right here, who never gets shine. You never hear about him. But man, was he another awesome defender in the 90s. And this guy could make all defensive teams, but all these other guys that I showed you who made them in the 2000s, they couldn't. This guy is one of the reasons why.
He nearly got one over Georgia Tech. Takeaway by Blaylock. Ahead to 5, 4, Snow. Driving, Mookie takes it away. At 31-25. Parker had his pocket picked by Blaylock, and Mookie lays it in.
Mookie Blaylock, the NBA steals leader, gets another one.
And the Hawks. Iverson tried to carry it up. He does have a world of talent, and he's a great kid. Right. But I tell you what, you can't... Iverson and Coleman. DC, a little shake and bake. Mookie got a hand on that one.
Boy, Mookie just disrupting their offense.
Here's Davis. And Mookie got his hand on that one. And Coleman had it stripped by Mookie. McCaster dives in. Coleman gives it.
Look at the defense. Dikembe cut Coleman off beautifully, and Mookie just harassing him.
Oh, and they come up against Derek Coleman for the win. It's short. They follow. Taken away by Mookie, and the ball game is over.
Those highlights are all from one game. That was no highlight reel. That was the same game. Mookie Blaylock. That dude was great. Came in 1990. By 94, he's 7th for Defensive Player of the Year, and he made all defense at age 26. 6-time all defensive player. He was an excellent defensive point guard. Now, Tim Duncan is on here to show. Now, Tim Duncan is an elite defender. He comes right in 98, immediately is 5th for Defensive Player of the Year, and is 2nd team all defense. Immediately. That's an immediate impact player. So just to show, it wasn't about having a bias towards the players that just do it by reputation. No, if a guy comes in legitimately deserves it, he got voted into it. Tim Duncan is the prime example of that. Jason Kidd's another guy, had to wait his turn. He had to wait about 5 or 6 years before he showed up on an all-defensive team. Now, Kevin Garnett was a little quicker than that. He was a natural great defender from right away. I think his 4th season, he was also like a 19-year-old rookie. By 22, he's making all defense that quickly. So I believe if Kevin Garnett would have came in the earlier mid-90s, yeah, he would have made all defensive teams anyway, no matter who was in front of him. But those other guys I showed you, the Ben Wallace's, Doug Christie's, Bruce Bowen's, Marcus Camby's, Chauncey Billups, even Shaq and Alonzo Mourning, they had to wait their turn until the premier, elite defenders of the 90s aged out. This is my proof right here. Dikembe Mutombo won Defensive Player of the Year at age 34 in 2001. The next season, at age 35, he was 3rd for Defensive Player of the Year. So my contention is that the 90s just had the best defensive players of all time. That does not mean the 2000s did not have good defenders. They did. But the 90s were just a little better. They just were. If you took the best defenders of the 2000s and you matched them up against the 90s is just better. I mean, you're talking Alvin Robertson, Mookie Blaylock, Gary Payton, and Michael Jordan at guard. Not to mention all the other guys like John Stockton. There's a bunch more. Joe Dumars. There's several more. But those were the best. When you look at it forwards, it's Pippen and Rodman. Those were the best defensive forwards of the 90s, bar none. And then at center, like I said, you had Olajuwon, Robinson, and Mutombo that basically made all the teams in the 90s, with the exception of a couple that Patrick Ewing was able to get. But then, as those guys aged out at the very end of the 90s and into the 2000s, that's when Alonzo Mourning and Shaquille O'Neal could start making all defensive teams. So to fools and idiots like FYF Sports, you have no idea what you're talking about. You reveal your own ignorance by saying, yeah, the 90s, I guess, had the best centers, but they really weren't as good as what everybody says. You can present no era better, but then crap on it at the same time. Just morons do these things. That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. And I do think the 70s had some really good centers. So did the 60s. The 80s did. But the 90s just seemed to have more of them. And he likes to talk about the bums like Oliver Miller. Oliver Miller was a backup for Phoenix. Mark West was the starting center. Old Sam Perkins? What are you talking about? I'm talking about Rick Smits, Mark Eaton, Robert Parrish, Alonzo Mourning, Shaquille O'Neal, Larry Johnson, Sean Kemp. These are the guys I'm talking about. Brad Daugherty. These are great centers. And the league was full of them because that's what the league was geared towards. Just another idiot and clown. What can you say? Anyway, that's all I got for this video. Thank you guys for watching. If you liked it, please hit the like button. If you wouldn't mind sharing it, that would be great. If you haven't subscribed already, please do. I give daily content. And that's it. Until next time.